Gremlins! As I said a couple videos ago, I'm making a second moss sweater. This video is inspired by this video from Rachel Maxey's channel on YouTube, and this creator on Instagram, both of whom have created very textured mossy products, and I want to create my own. So I've got this sweater as a base that I'm going to then weave in a whole collection of mossy textured yarns to make it look like the kind of moss that dangles off a tree. So hopefully this works out. This is territory I haven't stepped into before, so I'm excited and also a little nervous. The method for creating this moss texture is pretty simple, and to be honest, got tedious pretty fast. I'm using a latch hooker, although a crochet hook would probably also work. I poke the latch hooker through a few of the stitches of my base sweater, then loop a short piece of textured yarn over the hook and pull it through the stitches before tying it by pulling the loose ends of the yarn through the loop I create. To give this sweater a lot of texture and color variety, I have 6 yarns that I'm using primarily. Some were bought for this project, while others were previously part of different projects that have been reclaimed. I frogged a teddy bear sweater I knitted previously, and I'm currently replacing with a different, brighter shade of knitted moss, as well as a pair of fuzzy socks I found in a thrift store. I'm just hoping I have enough yarn. I don't want the tendrils of moss to dangle too far beyond the hem of the sweater, so for the bottom ribbed pattern, I'm sewing my chunkiest moss yarn through the sweater to cover the base in a moss texture without anything dangling. I later used this same method for the sleeve cuffs, which is extra important as I need to be able to use a wheelchair wearing this sweater without the moss getting caught in the wheels. Partway into this project, I realized that I wouldn't have a lot of process to talk about in this voiceover, as the process is easy to explain. It just takes a long time without much variety in the method. So instead of making this a 3-minute video after hours of work, I've decided to use this as a chance to properly research moss, and then info dump what I learned to you while my latch hooking process plays in the background. Occasionally I'll interrupt myself to give updates on the sweater progress as I hit milestones or different days of work. Moss describes a group of small, non-vascular plants containing at least 12,000 species. They first evolved as early as the Permian period, between 298.9 million years ago and 251.9 million years ago. And while due to their soft nature the fossil record of moss is limited, what fossils we do have show that ancient mosses have a very similar structure to modern moss we see today. Mosses are part of the Bryophyta group, alongside other small non-vascular plants like liverworts and hornworts. Due to their lack of vascular system, most moss can be found in damp and shady areas where they can retain water. However, moss can be found in almost every terrestrial habitat on Earth. Some mosses are desiccation tolerant and live in arid and semi-arid ecosystems as long as they receive sufficient moisture for fertilization. It doesn't take long for water to rehydrate these mosses. Other mosses live underwater, in urban environments and human-made structures, and even on the coasts of Antarctica. Unlike most plants, mosses reproduce with spores, not seeds, and they are not flowering. Instead, small tendrils will grow up from the moss to release their spores in the right season. It's the beginning of day 3 of working on this. I've got the whole front done, and today I'm going to tackle the sleeves, which will probably be harder because the sleeve isn't on top of the mannequin the way the front is, so it'll be harder to work all the way around it. But I am determined to get at least one sleeve done today. Hopefully I can get both sleeves done today, and hopefully I don't completely run out of yarn, because I was beginning to worry that that will happen. I won't run out of all my yarn, but some of the variety may be gone by the time I get to the back. But anyway, let's see how today goes. Individual moss plants are made up of simple, tiny leaves, usually only 1 cell thick, and attached to a stem that has a limited role in conducting water and nutrients. Moss tends to grow in clumps or mats, on soil, trees, or even rock. It has an important role in ecosystems, both helping with water drainage and soil erosion, and by breaking nutrients into more usable forms for other plants. It also, like all plants, is a CO2 absorber. Technically speaking, the type of moss I'm loosely basing this sweater off is not actually a species of moss. Spanish moss is an air plant, not a moss, and one of several species with the name moss that are not mosses. Other examples include various lichens, algae, or even ferns. Unlike moss, Spanish moss is a flowering plant, and with a much larger structure than most mosses. It grows in tropical and subtropical climates, mostly found in the Americas and West Indies, as well as, non-natively, in Australia. My room is a mess and I didn't plug my mic in, but here's the progress on the sweater. I've got one sleeve done, except for the inner part of the arm, which I've decided to just not do, because it was too much of a pain, and most of the time it won't be visible anyway. Plus, you know, there are always bits of trees that don't have moss. Yeah, I'm really liking it, and I'm gonna do the other arm after lunch. Spanish moss, also known as old man's beard, is made up of slender stems covered in thin or curly leaves that grow in long chains. Some garlands of Spanish moss have grown up to 8 meters long. Spanish moss grows in trees and has no roots. They are found in swamps, lowlands, and marshes where the weather is warm and humid. While Spanish moss may look parasitic, it does not absorb nutrients from its host tree, but rather from the rain and air around it. The only risk Spanish moss poses to a tree is growing too much to the point where it blocks light from the tree's leaves and slows its growth. I've been continuing to work at the back of the sweater, just doing bits and pieces whenever I have time and energy, which isn't often at the moment. And I'm also beginning to run low on some of the yarns that I'm using, so I was really excited when in the thrift store I found a pack of textured green yarn. It's so the wrong shade. This will not work with the rest of the yarns, so that's saved for a later project, and I'm gonna just have to do the best I can with what yarn I've got left. So today I'm gonna try and get a bit more of the back done. I haven't had the energy to just sit down and finish it, so probably I'll just do another piece. I'm kind of aiming for get up to there and then take a break. Yeah, working around my energy levels now that class has started again is a little bit tricky, but I'll find my rhythm eventually. Several creatures can make Spanish moss their home, including bats, snakes, and spiders. This tempts me to make a small bat necklace or spider brooch or something similar to wear with my moss sweater, although if I do end up doing that, it will be at a later date. Spanish moss is very sensitive to air quality and avoids areas with smoke or significant air pollution, including urban environments. Thank you for listening to me share my knowledge I just found on moss and Spanish moss. My sources are linked in the description, and there's a lot more technical information I could not understand well enough to talk about. I spent about a week on this sweater working in bits and pieces. Some days I worked for hours while listening to audiobooks. Other days I just did a small section or two. Some days I didn't have the energy to work on it at all. But slowly my vision of a fluffy, mossy, overgrown sweater emerged. The front is more densely mossed than the back and sleeves, but the texture of it all hides where I left larger gaps between loops of yarn to speed up the process and preserve my dwindling supplies. By the time I reached the back of the sweater, I was very much running out of two of my yarns, the two yarns I'd frogged from pre-existing projects. Off camera, I even unpicked a moss patch made out of one of those yarns from a separate project and frogged it to give myself just enough. And it was only just enough. When I finished the sweater, I had nothing left of either yarn, but I still had those colours and textures evenly distributed across the sweater. I ran out at the end and not before. The final section of the sweater is the collar, which I'm lining it all in one bright green eyelash yarn, which is one of the best textures of my yarn. This is still the part of the project that will most likely give me sensory issues when wearing the sweater, but if I wear a long sleeve underneath with a slightly higher neckline, I should be fine. And with that, the tedium of latch hooking is complete, and it's time to try this glorious sweater on for the reveal. It is finished, and I'm so happy with it. It is maybe not the most practical item of clothing I've made on this channel, but also I did wear it to the grocery store today, so with me, perhaps this is practical. I love how it moves, how all the individual filaments of moss move with me, and it's very fun to stim in, especially, like repetitive movements in this sweater. Very fun. This was a tedious process, I'll be honest. It's going to be a while before I'm willing to do latch hooking again, which is a shame because I do have another latch hooking project on the back burner. It's just going to be put off for a while because I need a break. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and perhaps I inspired you to make some mossy clothing of your own. Yeah, until next time, bye!